Hi, my name's Ronel. I've been in Pinetown for most of my life. I was born here and moved away a little bit from time to time, but yeah, I always seem to end up back in Pinetown. I grew up in quite a big family of 4 kids, but we didn't grow up in a Christian family. I knew very little about God growing up, and we weren't a very close family.
I'm Gary. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, for people who know where that is. Stayed in Johannesburg for a while and then down to Durban. And I grew up most of my life down in Durban. I grew up when I was a youngster in church, but then obviously moved away from church. And then got back into church, met Ronel, and we've been together since then.
I grew up very lonely, and as I got older, my loneliness became a depression. I was always trying to find somewhere to fit in, and because I didn't really have much of a moral compass, not a godly home, I made all the wrong choices. So my life was full of partying and alcohol and unhealthy relationships, and none of that fulfilled me at all. I was in a dark place.
I think for me, it's from being a youngster in church, being forced to go to church. It sort of squashed that love that could have been there. And by the time I was 13, 14, I was already going out partying with friends, behind my parents' back, sleeping at friends' houses, met up with wrong people, gone to drugs, heavily involved with alcohol, and just looking in the wrong places for the right situation. And that all changed just by coincidence, without even realizing how it was changing my life, that God was actually working all those times, keeping me alive for the moment when I met Ronel, and to hear his voice. And that was a instantaneous saying, and now I know where you are. That's where you're going. I was basically going straight from work into the bar, drinking every single night, taking drugs every single night, going home, having a couple of hours sleep, then back to work. That was 7 days a week. And it took one night where just bumped into Ronel. We had worked at the same company but never spoke. And at the time she was backsliding a little bit in church, and I met her in a club. Now the people that were there, you've heard the saying, God leaves just left the 99 to find the one. And I was saying to Ronel the other night, she was like Jesus coming to search for me and me searching for her. And that night we ended up went down to the beach and everything, and went back to her place. And I was still much in the world. And we got to the stage where God just spoke and said, that's my daughter, look after her. And I said to Ronel, sorry, I've got to go home. I left straight away. And I think that was a turning point for me, is understanding who God was.
I think for my story, I was involved with the wrong people. I'd gone away for a weekend with the wrong bunch, and there was nothing that was taboo for me. Everything, I would do anything and everything. And this particular weekend, I'd gone away with these people. I was a bit of a third wheel. I got sick on the weekend, and I felt terrible. I was sick. I was feeling uncomfortable, like I wasn't in the right place. And eventually, halfway through the weekend, I asked them to drop me at my mom and dad's down the coast where they stayed, which was close to where I was for that weekend. And I was at my lowest point. I was miserable. I just hated my life. And when I went back to work on the Monday, the gentleman in the office next to me at work, who'd been asking me over and over again to come to an Alpha course, and I'd always said, I'm not interested, it's not for me, it's not interested in church, I'm having too much fun. And that morning he popped his head in my office and he said, "Come on, Ronel, don't you want to come to the Alpha course on Wednesday?" And I was just ready. I was just ready. God had, let me get to a point where I just knew so badly that I needed a change in my life. I was very ashamed of myself, and so I went to that first Alpha course, and phew, God just touched me. Yeah, and that was it. No turning back.
We've made a decision in our lives that God will always come first, and through what we're doing, they will experience. And we've had struggles. We've been in another church that basically, I don't know, almost like stripped down Christianity. And we actually walked away from the church for 13 years, but we knew God was still with us. In everything we did, we could have been divorced. We had horrible fights, but we always kept together. And then 2 years ago, just coming back and running into old friends, invited us to Dwell. And we had such a list that we made up for God. If we were to go back to church, this is what we wanted. And every little box was ticked and much more. Mm-hmm. And we've been here all this time, and still more and more been added. But we've been given the capacity now because of the love that's been shown out through the family unit in the church. The true church is actually the people, it's not the building. And that love that was shown straight away, we came in very welcoming. There's no, oh, you dress like that or dress like this. It was open love that came through, which showed the true heart of Christ. He just loved people.
Yeah.
And that's what came through to us, which helped us at the end of the service to go to Pastor Shelley and Gareth and say, we're actually home. This is where we should be. And God has just been so faithful in what He's shown us from that first day to where we are now.
Yeah.
It's true love.
Yeah, and we'd never heard of Dwell. We'd been in and out of Checkers daily almost. We'd never seen, in fact, we'd seen the sign, but I'd seen the emblem, and it was like the enemy didn't want us to see it, because in my mind, the emblem was like I didn't see Christian church on the sign. I never saw it. And then, and then we bumped into Pastor Shelley at Checkers the one day, and she said, "Come and visit." And we were ready. That was it. From the first time we walked into Dwell, we said, "This is it.
Yeah.
This is where we need to be. This is home." Yeah.
I know I interrupted you now.
No,
You're
it's
about
fine.
to speak about your family weekend.
Okay. Just if I could just take a step back and say, when we were in church previously, I don't think our foundations were strong enough at that stage. And for me particularly, I still had this thing of trying to please people and, not get recognition, but, the family I grew up in, you were loved because you were doing, things right, and maybe not loved if you weren't doing things right. So it was very much a performance thing for me, and I don't think I'd matured strongly enough in the other church when we walked away. And then it's incredible how when you do walk away, yes, God is still with you, but it's different when you're not fellowshipping. When you're not fellowshipping, it's so easy for the enemy to trip you up and draw you into the wrong things again, But Gary and I've got our two gorgeous boys. Being married to Gary was such a blessing because I didn't really know how to nurture and love. It wasn't taught to us. It wasn't part of our upbringing. So, he really taught me how to love my boys. So it was, God knew what we needed in each other. Yeah. I think if I had to speak to my younger self, I'd say no amount of fun or alcohol or money, clothes, things will ever fulfill you. there'll always be a hole in your heart, and there's only one way to fill that hole, and that's to accept Jesus into your heart. And I think as a youngster, it's difficult. You want to be cool, and sometimes people think church isn't cool. But man, the journey that you'll go on and the places God will take you to and the things that He will do in your heart are just priceless.